Welcome to the Kiwimana Buzz.
Hello, this is Gary here from the Kiwimana Buzz, and we're a beekeeping podcast from the hills of West Auckland in the Waitakere Ranges. And we talk about beekeeping, gardening, and life. And we also interview beekeepers from around the world to get different perspectives on how they keep bees in different areas and issues they face in different areas. And today we have an interview with Linda Tillman, and she's from Atlanta in Georgia. And she's the famous beekeeper behind the great Linda's Bees blog, which is we really enjoy, and we've been reading since we've been beekeeping. So sit back and enjoy this interview with Linda. Okay, hello everyone, and today we've got Linda Tillman, and Linda is a master beekeeper from Atlanta in the state of Georgia, and she's the lady behind the successful beekeeping blog Linda's Bees. So we're giving the Kiwimana audience a little overview, Linda, but take it from here and tell us who you are and what you do.
Do you mean what I do in real life, or what do I do as a beekeeper?
Yeah, as a beekeeper.
As a beekeeper, have been a treatment-free beekeeper since the beginning. I got my bees in 2006, the first beehive that I had. And frankly, my whole family thought I was crazy to be a beekeeper. So I started a blog so that I could put some pictures up so that maybe my family would see. They are in Mississippi. They aren't close to me. And I thought it would be a way for them to see what I was doing. So I put pictures up, and I would send my family there to go look. And then I found that nobody in Atlanta was treatment free. And most people in Atlanta were putting medication in their hive on a regular basis and that kind of thing. So when I needed to find answers to questions, I did what all of us do, which is these days, which is go to the internet. And on the internet, I found wonderful people like Michael Bush, who was very regularly answering questions on BeeMaster and BeeSource as well. And so there's so many wonderful people that are willing to share what they know with those of us that are questioning. And along the way, I would do things like I would say, I'm having this problem with my hive, and if you want to see a picture of the problem, here's a link to the picture, and I would put a link to my blog. And they would go and look, and pretty soon I now have people, about 1,000 hits a day, and people from all over the world that go and look at my blog. I have a big following in Turkey.
Oh, okay.
That's like the third most popular country that comes to my blog is Turkey. But anyway, so I've managed to stay treatment-free the whole time. I've never put any chemicals in my hive. I try not to feed the bees unless they're starving. And I use foundationless frames because more and more we're finding out not only that reusing comb is a bad thing, but that even beeswax that's found in hives that people say are organic beekeepers is contaminated. So I've been trying to let my bees build their own wax, and so I've really loved doing what I do. I have the same problems that every backyard beekeeper has. I've lost hives. I have hives that swarm. All the things that we deal with, I deal with too.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're big fans of your blog as well. So thanks for doing what you do.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's a great thing. I'm surprised that we're not number 2 country, New Zealand, because, you know.
No, you're not, I'm sorry to say, but thanks for visiting it so often. I think I haven't looked in a couple months, but the last time I looked, it was the U.S., Canada, Turkey, and England.
Oh, okay. That's fantastic. And your blog, is it beekeepinglinda.com, is that right?
It's beekeeperlinda.com.
Okay, yeah. And we'll put that in the show notes for everyone.
Okay, thank you.
So you started in 2006, is that right? And so how did you get started?
Well, I wanted to keep chickens. I've always wanted to keep chickens. I'd read a lot about keeping chickens. I'd bought a bunch of books on keeping chickens, but there's some issues in Atlanta. I live in the middle of the city. And there's some issues, some laws that are no longer, people don't pay much attention to them, but in 2006 they did. In 2006 the law was if you were going to have a chicken coop, it had to be no closer than 25 feet from your neighbor's house. And the yard that I had at the time, there was no way to have a chicken coop that was not going to be violating the law. But I talked to my children about it and said I really wanted to have chickens, and they said that they would not babysit chickens when I went out of town. I have 2 grown children that live in Atlanta. I have 3 children, but 2 of them live in Atlanta. And the 2 in Atlanta said there was no way that they were going to be chicken babysitters. So I was feeling all mournful about that and driving around on a Saturday morning, and there's a garden show in Atlanta that a lot of people listen to. So I was listening to the garden show, and the guy on the garden show was talking about beekeeping. And he said that there were 3 beekeeping classes that were coming up. One of them was in a city near here, but too far for me to go on a day that I couldn't go. And the second one was also in a different place, too far for me to go. The third one was just up the street from where I lived at the only date of the 3 he'd named when I could go. I literally pulled my car off the side of the road. And at that point, I know this seems like ancient history and it was just 2006, but at that point, everybody didn't have a cell phone. I had a mobile phone plugged into my car, and you couldn't use it while you were driving. So I pulled over to the side of the road and called up the number that he gave and signed up, went to the class. By the end of the class, I ordered bees. I ordered my hive equipment. I was ready to go. So, and bees don't require babysitting when you go out of town. So my children weren't bothered and life was good.
That was fantastic. So yeah, I bet they're not too keen on babysitting bees anyway, even if they had to.
That's really right. And then, I didn't know until after I'd ordered them that you don't pick them up till nighttime. And I got the call from the guy that I was buying them from. He's about 30 minutes from my house. And I went and picked them up at night, like he said. And I said to the guy, his name was PN. I said, PN, what do I do when I get those bees back to my house? And he said, well, I said, how are they going to be okay in my car? Because they were actually inside my car. He said, well, they'll be all right. Just don't go over any bumps. And so I left his place in Forest Park, and I'm driving up the interstate in Atlanta. When you're on the interstate, I don't know how the highways are in New Zealand, but on the interstate in the United States, they're pretty smooth driving. They're not bumps, So I'm driving along, and I've quit thinking about bumps. I'm thinking instead about, I'm going to get honey. I've got bees. This is the best thing. And I drive, and I get to my driveway 30 minutes away. And as I turn up the driveway, there's a bump. And I go bump and go up the hill to my house and stopped and opened the back of the car, and there are bees everywhere, everywhere. So I picked up the hive anyway and walked. You wouldn't believe I did this, Gary. I walked through my house carrying the bees to the deck where I was going to install them. And I have to tell you that 4 days after that, I found bees in the house. I guess I dripped bees as I walked. The second hive, I had a little more sense, and I walked around the house and up the steps to the deck and put them there. But I really made a mess of things. But it was fun. I've had fun ever since, and I've sort of laughed at myself about that, but I hadn't been hard on myself for how I got started. Everybody has their getting started story.
Absolutely. We spoke to Michael Young. His first beehive didn't have a roof.
Oh, so, really? I remember he said that on your podcast.
Yeah.
He didn't have what did he call it? There's another name for it than what we call it in this country. We call it a telescope and cover, but he called it something else. Yeah,
that's right. And he ends up getting there, and the van was full of bees. It was quite funny.
Oh, mercy. Well, like I said, everybody has their story because all of us get started, and it's not easy to get started.
No, absolutely. And so what kind of hives do you normally keep? What type?
I have mostly the last 2 years I've had only Langstroth hives. The year before that I had a top bar hive and Langstroth hives. But now I've only got Langstroth hives. I need to rebuild. I would like to do a top bar again, but I need to rebuild it. I want to get Les Crowder's book on top bar beekeeping because I think it's the best one out there. And he has a better plan for how to build a top bar hive than anyone I've seen.
Oh, okay. Oh, it sounds like a good book. So how did you find the top bar hive when you had it?
It was very difficult, really. There's no way, in a Langstroth hive with frames around the honeycomb, if anything goes wrong, you can tie the comb in or rubber band it in or something. In a top bar hive, there's really not a good way to manage comb that breaks, and comb is always attaching to the sides of the top bar hive. Now, I understand Les Crowder's hives there's a less of an angle, and the plan that he has would make it so they're less likely to attach to the side. But I'm not eager to try that again. It was really a mess.
Yeah. Yeah, I know we've got a top bar hive here, and Margaret has lots of trouble with it, with the comb falling off and stuff. Mm-hmm. So she's kind of made.
Not up for that anymore.
Yeah, she's kind of made some frames to put the comb in, so it makes it a bit easier.
Oh, yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah.
So doing a sort of an adaptation, it sounds like.
Yeah. Oh, that'll be interesting to see how you get on with that next year then. Mm-hmm. I suppose it's this year for you guys, because you're going into spring now, aren't you?
Yeah, we're just about starting spring, and I just opened my hives 2 weeks ago for the first time.
Yeah, no, they were going well. I saw on your blog post.
Oh, so well. I've just been really pleased. The one in my backyard already has a super on it, and they're bringing nectar in. It's very unusual this early in March. But, we're not out of the woods yet. In Atlanta, we've had snow as late as today. Actually, this is the latest day I can remember in history since I've lived in Atlanta of our having snow. But you never can tell. I don't trust Atlanta till we get to April.
Yeah, you've got very marginal weather, eh? A lot of snow, which is something we
don't have a lot of snow, but we can have snow in March and have.
Oh, okay. Wow.
Mostly we just have, the last 2 winters, I don't think I've worn my winter coat more than 2 days, but this winter was cold.
Oh, wow. And so what excites you about beekeeping, Linda?
Oh, I just love beekeeping. I don't know about excites. I can tell you what I love about it. Would that be an okay
Yeah,
answer?
that's fine, yeah.
What I love about it is I tend to be a pretty fast-paced person. I have a lot going on in my life. I have many responsibilities. I'm a clinical psychologist in private practice, so I have a real busy practice. I'm the editor of 2 newsletters, one the state newsletter for the Georgia Beekeeping Association, and the other a national newsletter that is for my psychology organization. So I've got huge responsibilities, and I'm always in a hurry, and I'm always like juggling and balancing. I have 3 grandchildren I spend lots of time with, so I feel like I'm always rushing, and you cannot do that in the beehive. And I absolutely love about the bees that I am moving slowly, and I'm inviting myself into their lives, and I feel such respect for them, and I find bees absolutely fascinating. So probably what I love about bees is that it slows me down. That's one thing. Another thing I love about the bees is how much it has broadened my perspective on things. I learned much more about carpentry than I ever thought I would know. And I don't know about I'll tell you that in a minute. And I learned about biology. I've always been interested in biology, but I pay attention now, and I'm sure you do too, what season every plant blooms and whether it has anything to do with the bees or not. And I make fun of my mother, who's 92 and watches the Weather Channel pretty much all the time. But I get up in the morning and I want to know what's the weather and how's it going to affect the bees. And I'm not 92, but boy, it makes me feel like that because I'm always interested in the weather. So there's a way that it has just broadened my perspective on everything and opened up so many interesting doors. One of the funny things that happened to me, because I've learned more about carpentry than I ever expected to, in Georgia, now in the United States, I don't know how it works in New Zealand, but in the United States, boards are classified as like a 1x2. And a 1x2 supposedly means 1 inch by 2 inches. But that's not how they cut them. A 1x2 is really 3/4 by 1 3/4. And so I was trying to make something using dimensions of 1x2, and I got home and it didn't fit because who knew that a 1x2 wasn't 1x2? I think it's completely dishonest. They should label them accurately. They aren't really cutting a 1x2. And I don't know who said that was okay, but somebody must have. Anyway, it completely confused me. I was trying to make a shim for my hive, and I had to redo it more than once because of the 1x2 issue.
Yeah. I think that's the unplaned measurement, isn't it, in woodworking?
Is that what it is? I have no idea.
Yeah.
I just know I felt betrayed by Home Depot.
Yeah, well, that's true. Well, the way they sell pesticides, maybe that's it's a shocking place, isn't it? Apparently, but anyway, so that's great.
Well, I needed this is another thing that got me. I needed a soldering iron because I was making small hive beetle traps with sandwich boxes, and I needed a soldering iron to melt little holes in the plastic.
Okay.
And the heat of the soldering iron would do that, to make a hole for the small hive beetle to go into the sandwich box trap. Well, I went to find a soldering iron, and I just happened to be at Michael's, which is an arts and crafts store in the States, and they had a woman's soldering iron. It was in a pink box, and it was pale green on the handle. I was so insulted. I bought it because I needed the soldering iron, but I was so angry that they would call it a woman's soldering iron and put it in a pink box. I mean, how would it be any different besides the color from a man's soldering iron?
Yeah, that's amazing. I don't know if you've watched the Ellen show, but she just had a thing recently about women's pens. Did you see that? That was really funny.
I'll have to look for that.
I'll try and include it in the show notes. It's just a bit of a piss take kind of thing. It's quite funny.
I love Ellen. Anything she says is funny.
Yeah, she's a great comedian. Yeah, no, that's great. I know what you mean about the Weather Channel, because that's my homepage. I'm constantly looking at the rain radar pictures, and and I'm getting so good. You can predict how many minutes you can have the hive open and stuff. And
there you go.
Yeah,
exactly.
Absolutely. Oh, that's good. And so what's one thing you wish you knew now that you didn't know before you started beekeeping?
What I wish I'd known before I started beekeeping is that I wish I'd known to use all the same size boxes. Most beekeepers in the States use deep boxes with a medium on top of that and maybe shallows for supers.
Yeah.
And I bought deep boxes. I'm a good little girl. I'm an oldest child, and you tell me what the rules are and I'm going to follow them. So I'm following the rules, and I go and buy a deep box and a medium box and several shallows for all my hives I was getting started with. And the first 2 years, that's what I did. So I had 4 or 5 deep boxes, and I wish I had started with all mediums. It's a little bit of a problem. The advantage, in case your listeners don't know the advantage of all medium boxes, is the transferability of frames. So if you're using all medium boxes and you have brood in the bottom box, as typically the queen will do, and you have a queenless hive somewhere who's the queen was doing brood in the middle box, you can put a frame. You can't take a deep frame and put it in that box. So if you need to put a frame of brood and eggs in a box, you can't do it if it's a deep box and you want to put it in a medium box. So the transferability, I don't know if that made sense or not, but transferring the frames around makes a huge amount of difference to have all the same frames. Also, I only use 8 frame boxes, and I had 10 frames at the beginning, and I wish to goodness I'd only bought 8 frame boxes, because 10 frames are heavy as lead, and I want to be able to do this till I'm dead and gone. And so I really want lighter boxes, and the 8 frame mediums are perfect for me and for most people. I know a woman who does all her beekeeping in shallow boxes. So I think my biggest wish that I wish I'd known ahead of time is I wish I'd known ahead of time to use all the same size equipment.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Yeah, and using 8 frames is a good idea as well. Absolutely.
Well, I learned it all from Michael Bush.
Yeah.
I learned from Michael Bush.
Oh yeah, he's a great guy, isn't he?
He is. I met him. I was so excited. I met him in Leominster, I think is how they say it, Massachusetts, at an organic beekeeping conference about 2 years ago. And I just wanted to sit in his lap. I wanted to sit beside him and get as close to him as I could, and I wanted to hear every word he said, because I felt like, my beekeeping hero, and I'm with him. I was so excited. But anyway, I feel like he and I are friends now, which is very nice. We correspond occasionally, and he's a nice guy, and I like him a lot. But he was very helpful to me when I was getting started, and I couldn't get answers to anything except on Beemaster, and I would just write a question on Beemaster and hold my breath till Michael Bush responded. Other people responded, and I very much, if any of you all are listening, I very much appreciated all of their input, but who I was always waiting for was Michael Bush.
Yeah, I've been talking to Michael. Hopefully we're going to get him on the show soon, so you'll have to listen out for that one. And put on a good word for us, Linda.
I will. He's a lovely person.
Yeah, he is.
He plays the guitar. I heard him. I went after I saw him in Leominster. I then went. He was giving a talk in Asheville, North Carolina. And that's 3 hours from here. So I drove up to hear him speak in Asheville, and he was playing the guitar at a break. It was really cool. Yeah. Sort of music from the 60s.
That's right. I think I saw your photos.
Oh yeah, of him playing the guitar. Right.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's fantastic. Oh well, we'll have to try and get Michael on the show at some point. You should.
He's lovely to talk to and a very interesting fella.
Yeah, and he's got a lot of stuff he says is all common sense, isn't it? And it's just really practical, and it's a great website. Great website.
He's very practical. I think it's just really helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. So you touched on you've got small hive beetles in Atlanta. Is it the biggest issue facing beekeeping in Atlanta at the moment?
Oh, boy. There are a lot of issues facing beekeeping in Atlanta. Our biggest, if you're asking about the biggest pest we face, the biggest pest I think we face is the small hive beetle. The varroa mite, of course, is everywhere, and it's in our hives as well. But if you have a strong hive, I'm about survivor hives. And if a strong hive survives through the winter, then I'm happy about that, and I want to split it and turn it into 2 hives and go forward with that surviving hive. But the small hive beetle is an icky pest, and when it gets, do you have them in New Zealand?
No, luckily no, not yet.
Ugh, they're awful. They figure out how to coexist with the bees so that there can be a lot of them in the hive. The bees tend to corral them into corners. You might open a hive, and in the corner of the top of the hive, the bees will have pretty much packed it full of small hive beetles. Not dead ones, they're alive. But they keep them there, kind of corralled there. And when you open the hive, you free the small hive beetle, which is a bad thing for the beekeeper. And if the small hive beetle lays its larva, which it does, in the hive and slimes the honey, it smells like orange juice gone bad. And the honey tastes terrible and it isn't good honey. And it's just a mess. It can be a complete mess. I had a hive swarm abscond last year toward the end of the bee season, and the reason it absconded, I found out as time went on, was that all of their honey had been contaminated by the small hive beetle.
Oh, God.
It was a huge hive. It wasn't a weak hive. You know, if you lose a hive and you have wax moths, people will say, I lost my hive to the wax moth, which is not true. They lost their hive because the hive got weak, and then the wax moth takes over. The wax moth is an opportunist.
Yeah.
The small hive beetle is also an opportunist, but they can take over a hive that's not weak.
Absolutely. And so they can actually take over a really strong hive then, can they?
Yeah, I mean, mostly they don't, but like last year the reason they could take over strong hives is we would have hives that were very strong but didn't have good honey stores because it rained throughout the nectar flow in Atlanta last year. We had 3 days during the nectar flow, then it didn't rain, and the rest of the time it poured.
Yeah. So what do you do to control them? You sort of touched on you make traps. Are they effective?
I don't know that they're that effective. I mean, the most effective thing that people tend to use are nematodes. Do you know what nematodes are?
No, what are they?
Well, I can't tell you exactly because I've never seen one. I ordered some. There's a company you can order them from in Atlanta in Georgia called Southeast Insectaries. And they come in clear plastic bags that's kind of got a gelatinous feel to it.
Yeah.
And the instructions say to take the nematodes, which you can't see, that are in this clear plastic bag, and mix them with 3 gallons of water. It really was funny. My friend and I did it together, and we just died laughing because it was like the Emperor's New Clothes. Here we are pouring this invisible thing into the pitcher, and then we're stirring like crazy. Can't see what we're stirring. Don't know if it's mixed in or not because it's all invisible as far as we were concerned. And then you pour the liquid that results from this on the ground around the hives, and the nematodes kill the small hive beetle larvae. So that's supposed to be the most effective way to deal with them.
Oh,
I'm not organized enough, and my hives are on concrete, so it's a little hard to think that I can kill the small hive beetle when my hives are on concrete.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we talked to a guy, Tyson from Los Angeles, and he says the hives that are on roofs and stuff are less affected by them because they obviously can't breed in the ground. Does that help you with being them on concrete?
Well, my concrete I live in I have a little, what we'd call in Atlanta, in the United States, I have a postage stamp yard.
Yeah.
So I have a little tiny yard, and somebody made a basketball court in this back before I bought this house. So my hives are sitting on the basketball court, but right behind them is ground. So they're a foot behind the concrete, a foot behind the hive is ground. So I should put nematodes in that and see whether that makes a difference or not. But because that's the rest of my hives are all on grass, and so they're very likely to get small hive beetles.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Oh, that's no good at all. Eh? And so what do? You don't treat your varroas at all, do you?
I don't.
Do you do any organic methods, using drone management or anything like that, mesh boards or anything like that?
No, I'm a terrible beekeeper in that way, according to the people at the University of Georgia. But I look at all the people that I admire, Michael Bush and Bill Owens and Kirk Webster, and a lot of the beekeepers in the States who don't use any treatment still manage just fine. And mostly what they've done is what I'm talking about, where you split the hives that survive.
Yeah.
The problem for me is, and I've read this in Bee Culture, I believe, that if you buy bees, which I have bought bees in some form or fashion almost every year that I've been a beekeeper, if you buy bees and they come from somebody who has treated their bees, then the bees can't survive even if you're doing them treatment free because they're dependent on the treatment. So I've had a hard time having hives that survive. My best hives that have survived the winter have been hives that came from swarms. My strong hive in my backyard right now came from a swarm that I collected last year, and when I went to the place to get it, the people told me these bees had lived in this post, this column outside of a building from which they swarmed, that they'd been living there for years, that there had been bees in that post for years. Well, nobody's treating them, and they've survived, and they survived my winter here in my backyard. And the other hives that I have that really did well this winter were hives that I got at an auction from a man who does bee removals. So he's taking bees out of people's houses where they've lived in the walls for a long time. And those bees are also survivor bees, and they survived through the winter. So those are my best hives, are the ones that did not come from a purchase, but came from survivor bees.
Wow. So they sound like good genetics to split from then. Absolutely.
I'm hoping so. I mean, I think genetics is going to be the answer to the varroa problem no matter what, that's what we've got to depend on is genetics. I think when you treat, what you're doing is really breeding a stronger varroa mite.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we're having trouble here with a lot of the chemical treatments are becoming, the mites are becoming resistant to them. So
exactly. That's what I'm saying. They're stronger varroa mite.
Exactly. We're breeding super mites, as Margaret would say.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And what good is that, The other big problem I see in Atlanta is that beekeepers are encouraged to feed their bees all the time. I just wrote a blog post on it because I felt so angry about it. I mean, we've got nectar coming in right now, and the president of our bee club says, feed the bees. Go home and feed your bees across the board without saying, check your hives if they need feeding, feed them. But feed the bees right now while they're bringing in nectar and making honey. It just makes me mad.
Yeah, I have noticed that quite a bit with beekeepers in America. They seem to feed a lot more than we do here, and I kind of don't know why. Yeah, that's really weird to me as well.
Well, it also feels like the pot calling the kettle black. I don't know how they do in New Zealand, but there's a lot of criticism in the United States of China and the honey that they sell that's contaminated. And part of the criticism is not just that it's contaminated with noxious stuff, but that it has a high content of sugar syrup. Yeah. And I'm thinking, how can we complain about that when we're putting sugar syrup on our hives right now when the nectar's coming in? I'm sure that honey in Atlanta is frequently full of sugar syrup. Yes. Anyway, these guys, do you know Ding Stiglitz and Laurie Herbolsheimer that wrote The Complete Idiot's Guide to Beekeeping?
No, but I have heard that book's good, yeah.
It's a great book, and what they say in their book is to put blue food, if you're going to feed your bees, put blue food coloring in the sugar syrup. And then you'll see when it shows up in the honey that you are saying isn't contaminated with sugar syrup.
Oh, that's a good idea. Absolutely.
Yeah, if you'd be willing to take that risk, I think it would be a fine experiment.
Because the other thing that bees do is they often move honey from the bottom to the top,
Exactly.
So it's not Yeah, absolutely. No, I don't know why you need. I mean, if you need to feed them, it's fine. But the only time we generally feed is swarms here, late swarms.
Yeah.
Which they don't have enough nectar to get through the winter. We'll feed them all. Yeah.
And you should feed a package. If you're getting a package of bees, a package has not been prepared. It's not like a swarm. They didn't know they were leaving home. Yeah. And they just got dumped into a box by a beekeeper. So they didn't engorge themselves with honey the way a swarm does. So you dump a package of bees into a hive, you better feed them for a gallon or two so that they can get started. But beyond that, no.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we don't tend to have packages in New Zealand. It's all, everyone buys nukes or working hives, so.
Oh, I see. Oh, all right.
That seems to be an American thing that we, yeah.
America's all about money. I'm sure the commercial beekeepers make more money selling packages than selling nukes. But, the other problem with, if you're an all-medium person like I am, if you're using all-medium boxes, it's a little hard to get a nuke that's in a medium unless you negotiate with the seller. I'm buying 2 medium nukes this year, and in order to get them, I had to take my equipment to the beekeeper to put them in my equipment because he wasn't prepared to sell a medium nuke. Yeah,
that's well, we sell beekeeping supplies as well, and that's one thing we're going to look at doing this year. Make a few. Well, we call them here 3/4, you call them medium, but we're going to make some of those, make some nukes up for people because A lot of people just can't lift those heavy boxes. It's impossible. So
Good for you.
Yeah,
Yay, Gary. Support the medium 5 beekeeper, or whatever you call them.
Exactly. And we would be keen to make 8 frame ones, but we just have got to find someone to make the roofs. That's the only problem. We can't find anyone that makes the roofs very well. So
I see.
Yeah. So what are your plans for the next season or this season coming?
Well, I have a basement full of wax, and because I cut out, I replace my combs all the time and do foundationless beekeeping. I have a lot of wax.
Yeah.
And so one of the things I want to do this beekeeping season is figure out what to do with my wax. That's probably more of a winter activity, but I do a lot of solar wax melting during the summer, and so I want to pay attention to that this year. My main plans for beekeeping this year are try to keep my strong hive strong. That's what I'm aiming for. And I want to do good management. Like right now, last week, I went into the hive that was just busting out the seams in my backyard that came from that swarm that I was telling you about that had been living in the column forever. And I did checkerboarding like Walt Wright talks about, and put one box on top of the one below, and every other frame is empty.
Yeah.
So that the bees will feel like they have plenty of space and won't be concerned with swarming. I want to be very aware. Right now, our drones, I didn't see any drones in any hive I've opened up yet, but I saw a lot of drone brood. And so I feel quite sure that in the next week we'll have drone brood hatching. There's a great beekeeper in Virginia named Billy Davis, and I love hearing him talk. And he talks about when you look at the brood, you may not know this because you're in New Zealand, but he said when you look at the brood, you should be determining, is the brood light biscuit, medium biscuit, or overcooked biscuit? How does it look? And if it looks like overcooked biscuit, it's ready to emerge. And the drone brood that I was looking at looked more like medium biscuit. So I'm expecting that this week the drones will be emerging, and, give them another week or two and we're going to be in swarm season. So I want to do good hive management this year in terms of paying attention to the potential for swarming. I bought something that I want to experiment with. I heard a man talk at the Georgia beekeeping spring meeting in February, and he was talking about a queen castle that he has, which is a deep box set up. You know this already. It was a deep box set up for making essentially 4 2-frame nukes.
Yeah.
That you put in. So if you find a queen cell among many queen cells in a hive that might swarm, one thing you can do is to pull that frame and make a nuke out of it.
Yeah.
By putting that frame and one other frame in the queen castle. So I'm going to try to do better hive management in terms of swarming this year.
Yeah, we made one last season, a queen castle. It's quite cool. And so it's basically got 4 colonies in the one full size box.
Yes, It's cool that they have an entrance for each one of them too. I kind of like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like an apartment building.
Yeah,
condo.
I don't know if you've.
Queens.
Yeah, I don't know if you've seen the photos of our one, but we've got like different designs on each side, so the queen doesn't get confused. So
I'll have to look on your website and see that. That's great.
It's a pure work of art. Might need to sell it to an art gallery when we're finished with it. But.
There you go. You should. My friend Julia that I keep bees with paints her hives with all kinds. She's an artist, and all of her hives are artistically painted. Yeah,
absolutely. So how do you process your beeswax? Because I've come up with a new way to do it, but I'm just interested to see how you do yours.
What is your new way?
Well, I heard it from I don't know if you listen to the BK Corner, Kevin Ingram's podcast, and he had a method where what they do is they basically put all the wax after it's been in the solar wax melter into a cheesecloth in a big a bag, and I just put that at the bottom of a big pot and boil that, and it really cleans all the crap out of the wax. And at the top it comes, the top of the pan's just all the wax floats to the top, and you just take that out and just keep processing that.
I see. Well, I don't do it that way. I bought on eBay. You have eBay in New Zealand, right?
Yeah, we have a thing called Trade Me, which is like a similar thing. Yep.
Okay, well, I went on eBay and bought something that's called a Presto pot, which is set up, it's like a deep fryer, and somebody had adapted it with a spigot, and they sell them for candle makers. So what I do is what's great about it, unlike using boiling water, what's great about it is the wax is melted at a constant temperature of 100 and whatever you put it on. So I'll set it on like about 110 and let the wax melt. And then when I'm pouring it, using the spigot to pour it out, I put silk. I go to the fabric store and get silk, and I filter it through silk into a measuring cup that's been kept hot in hot water so that the wax doesn't solidify the minute it hits the glass measuring cup.
Yeah.
So I put the glass measuring cup in a pan of hot water, and I melt the wax in the Presto pot, and then I rubber band silk on top of the hot measuring cup, and I pour the wax through that, and then I pour it into whatever I'm going to do, candle molds or lip balm or whatever my plan is.
Oh, it sounds good. So have you got a blog post about that on your site? We'll have to link to that.
I'm sure I do. I know I do. I'm probably in making lip balm or something. It shows a picture of doing that.
Yeah.
I've got 1,100 and something posts on that blog, so it's hard for me to say, yes, post number 25. I don't know where it is. But I know I have pictures of pouring the wax through the silk into the measure.
Yeah. I think you had a blog post about doing competition wax at one point too.
Yes, oh my God, I've had such a history with competition wax.
Yeah.
One time, the first time I entered a wax block in a honey contest, I poured the block 18 times before I was done with it. I was so ready to throw the wax across the room by then. But of course you can barely touch it because you don't want a fingerprint on it and you don't want to scratch it. And, oh my gosh, that was the most traumatic thing I've tried to do with beeswax. Since then, I've learned a lot more about pouring wax. I'm actually giving a talk to my local bee club in August on how to manage wax. So I've got to get my act together to make sure that goes well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we'll probably have a blog post about this method we found. Yeah, it seems to work all right. So
yeah, sounds good.
We get a lot of people doing the encastic painting, buying the wax from us. So
that's good.
It was a great blog post you did with Michael about that. It's really fantastic.
It was fun to go to his workshop. It really was. I enjoy Michael. He's a nice man. I've been to a workshop with him on cooking honey, and I went to a workshop with him on encaustic painting, and then I've heard him talk about something else. He comes about every other year to the Young Harris Beekeeping Institute in Georgia. Yeah. So every time he's there, I go listen to him.
He's coming this year, so...
No, he's not. He came last year, but this year, I think you were looking. I saw that post from you, but I think you were looking at the 2013 speakers. But this year we've got Mark Winston, and who wrote The Biology of the Honeybee, and Dennis Van Ingelstorp, and two other people. A guy named Gary Budge, I think, and I don't know who the fourth person is. I don't think it's Michael, because I think I would have noticed.
Oh, okay, because I think well, that must be a mistake. I think he is travelling somewhere soon, but maybe that wasn't there. Maybe Well,
I might be wrong, too. I don't know, because like I said, I can't remember who the fourth person is, but I sure didn't think it was Michael, but maybe it is.
I think he's definitely going to America this year, but I'm not sure where. Maybe it's not Georgia. Mm-hmm. But if he does, check him out. He's a great guy, isn't he?
He is. He's a lovely speaker, and he's enthusiastic and fun, and I love Michael.
Yeah.
He throws himself into it.
He does. He's very enthusiastic. That's very true. Yes. And so what, if you could recommend one book for beginners, what would you recommend?
For beginners, I love The Complete Idiot's Guide to Beekeeping by Dean Stiglitz and Lori Herbolsheimer. I think that's her name. Because it emphasizes being very, very conservative in how you manage your bees. Yeah. So I like it. It's written simply, and it has little blurbs on a page that'll just be a little hint that might help you, or a definition that might be useful. And so I found it to be a very good basic book. I used to think First Lessons in Beekeeping by Keith Delaplane, but it was written in 2007, so it's a little out of date. It has a whole lot more about poison and that kind of stuff than I think even Keith would recommend these days. Actually, I hear him talk all the time, and he doesn't talk about poison in the way that he does in that book. Yeah. So I like The Complete Idiot's Guide. What else do I like that's a basic beekeeping book? Of course, if you have the time and you feel like it, reading Honeybee Democracy by Tom Seeley is a phenomenal book. And it really helps you understand what I would call the politics of the beehive. It's just beautiful the way they communicate with each other and make decisions. It's very democratic. And have you read that book?
No, I'm saving up for that one. It's a great book, isn't it? Yeah.
It is, yeah. It's kind of expensive, like $99, but it's a very good book. And then Mark Winston, who wrote The Biology of the Honeybee, that's what I studied to do Master Beekeeper. And it's a really good book, but it's not, I mean, if a beginner wants to learn how to keep bees, The Complete Idiot's Guide is about the best one I know, because it starts from scratch and takes you to the end. It's good.
Are they the guys that they're treatment free? Is that true? The people
Yeah,
that
they
wrote
are.
that book? Oh, yeah. That is the same book that Tyson was talking about in his interview. Yeah. Oh,
Yeah,
it
it's
sounds
a
like
really
a
good
popular
book.
one. Oh, cool.
Actually, Dean Stiglitz, who wrote the book with his wife, has a very funny video on how bees have sex.
Yeah.
And he talks about the drones and having a special hug with the queen.
Okay.
It's very cute. He did it very well, I thought.
Yeah. I mean, I've seen. It's amazing the video you see of them mating, isn't it? Have you seen those? And the what's that? There's what's it called? There's a new one just came out, isn't it? About More Than Honey, I think it is.
Yes.
Yes.
That's got the most beautiful photography I believe I've ever seen in it. That at the beginning, when they show the queen emerging from a queen cell and the bees helping her out of the queen cell, it just made me want to cry. It's just beautiful.
Yeah.
It's beautifully filmed. I don't know how they did that, but every piece of footage of that film is worth watching.
Yeah, I must get that. I think the one I'm thinking of is Tales from the Hive, which is an older one, I think.
Okay, well, More Than Honey is on Netflix and Amazon's Amazon Prime's videos, and so you should be able to get that in New Zealand.
Yeah, unfortunately we can't watch Netflix here.
You can't? Well, can you watch Amazon?
No. But you can buy
You can't
things.
watch video on Amazon? This is terrible.
I know. I know, it is shocking. Oh, we probably could buy the DVD.
Well, good. More Than Honey is worth it.
Okay, we'll check that out. And so, what's the best way for people to get in touch with you, Linda?
The best way to get in touch with me is either to visit my blog and click Email Linda, or to email me at beekeeperlinda@gmail.com.
Oh, that's fantastic. Well, thanks for coming on. Do you want to raise anything else?
No, I've had a great time talking to you.
No,
it's just been a lot of fun to sort of revisit beekeeping over the years.
Yeah,
I had
absolutely.
a good time.
Oh, I'm very happy we managed to finally get together and talk about stuff. So it's been really good.
Yeah, me too. I've enjoyed you a lot, and it's nice to meet you in person via Skype.
Yeah. Oh, good. Oh, well, we'll close the show there, but you stay on the line, Linda. So thanks everyone for listening. We really appreciate you guys all listening. And for those in America, you got to get ready now for the new season. So get out in your garage and start making your frames and doing your boxes. Isn't that right, Linda? Get all ready for...
That's absolutely right. It's time to get geared up.
Absolutely. And so all the links that we've mentioned here that Linda's mentioned will be in the show notes, which is kiwimana.co.nz/46. So we'll see you next time. And this is me signing off. Oh, I love that song.